Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. Yesterday I reported on the explosive volcanic activity out of Russia, and well, today we have multiple volcanoes erupting in and around Southeast Asia, specifically the Philippines and also Indonesia. This is Kanloa volcano. It erupted today, sending an ash plume up 5,000 meters. That's about 18,000 feet. That is a big eruption. We only see a small part of the ash cloud here with this initial eruptive blast, but if you look at this video compilation, we see just how big this ash cloud was, giving you a sense of the scale of this eruption. This was not a small event, and well, in fact, there are 4 other big events that occurred in Southeast Asia today, and I'm sure there are also numerous other lesser events that aren't reported on as often because, well, a lot of Southeast Asia is quite remote and in the wilderness and the jungles. So we have Kanloa volcano here out of the Philippines. We have Mayon volcano in the Philippines as well erupting. That just starting up a few months ago. It's been continuing and kind of actually increasing in its scale of eruption. Then we also had Lutobo volcano in Indonesia, also Merapi and Semeru volcanoes erupt in Indonesia. We had a pyroclastic flow at Merapi, and then the other 2 in Indonesia sent out pretty significant ash plumes. So this is no small eruption, as you can see. Let's look at Google Earth here to see the scale of these eruptions and where they are. Now, just to rewind, we had big eruptions on the Kamchatka Peninsula yesterday. Well, we've been having effusive activity from Krishenikov volcano, a volcano that was slumbering for 600 years, woke up after a magnitude 8.8 megaquake. Now it's having these regular lava flows. And then we had Shiveluch volcano really start to ramp up with its activity after that megaquake, July 2025 last year. It had a huge eruption yesterday, and it's actually been erupting pretty significantly for a few days now. Going further back, but really the past few days has been quite significant. Well, now we are having activity across all of Southeast Asia, and this comes, by the way, just after a G2 geomagnetic storm. So we had this high-speed stream of solar wind hit the Earth and didn't just trigger a minor geomagnetic storm, it actually triggered 9 hours of moderate activity, which was more than forecasted. We're looking at magnetic flux, these perturbations to the magnetic field across the entire planet, concentrated to the poles specifically, but still these reverberations ripple out across the entire globe. And well, right after that occurred, we see 5 volcanoes wake up in Southeast Asia. Here we see the location of them. Here's Mount Kanloa right here in the Philippines, and then we also see Mayon volcano there. They are close together. So this is speaking to larger changes that are unfolding as it relates to these subsurface volcanic systems. Because when you see multiple volcanoes erupt simultaneously, that tells you something. Now, I don't have information as to the size of the ash plume for Mayon volcano there, but we do see this data. If we look at our Morova data, we have our logarithmic radiative power information. And so we see that this didn't start up until effectively the end of December 25, the beginning of 2026. Now we're seeing regular eruptions, and the eruptions today are at high levels in terms of that thermal anomaly. So it really is quite powerful at this moment in time. Kanloa erupting and sending that ash cloud up 5,000 meters. And then we go down to Indonesia, and we have Lutobo, Semeru, and Mount Merapi. Lutobo sent off an ash cloud to 2,400 meters, so that's about 8,000 feet. Semeru sent an ash cloud up to 4,600 meters, or about 15,000 feet. And then Merapi here had a pyroclastic flow. So no super big ash cloud, but instead you have this superheated ash flowing down the slopes of Mount Merapi. It's been doing these pyroclastic flows, and the longer it keeps doing them, the more it looks like it may be building up to something perhaps bigger. You may recall Mount St. Helens 1980, that volcano erupted. That's not a big volcanic eruption, by the way, in the grand scheme. Blew off a whole chunk of it, and a huge pyroclastic flow went out, killing about 50 people. So we can have volcanic events like this of course, and sometimes they're actually much larger than that, where you get an entire volcano to become a caldera, and all that goes up into the atmosphere. That is a very real risk, especially for seeing increasing activity across the board. And well, it's important to pay attention to some of these external energetic factors, in my opinion, to help understand where we may be going, because we see here this high-speed stream impact. So you have the sun emit solar wind, and the solar wind is not homogeneous. In fact, it is structured. And so you have high density zones, you have low density zones, you have slow velocity, high velocity zones. And while we got hit by a high density zone, which then gave way to a high velocity zone of low density, we see that very clearly right here. Solar wind going all the way up to nearly 700 kilometers per second, whereas before it was down there at 400 kilometers per second. Temperature of the plasma went up, the density dropped suddenly after we had this shock wave right there. We see the plasma density being quite high. This is particles per cubic centimeter. Here's our magnetic field. We see the magnetic field strength go up, reaching highs of about 12 nanotesla, maybe even 13 there for a little bit. But we see really clearly the solar wind stream was very high velocity. We look down below, here is our geomagnetic storm. So we had a little bit perturbations at the beginning, 3 hours of minor conditions, and then a solid 9 hours of G2 conditions right here. That's moderate activity, followed by more G1 minor activity. So this is a pretty significant storm. Really gave a show to people up in areas where you can see the aurora. There were some amazing auroral displays as a result of this. And well, after that happened, right in this time frame there, we're seeing all these volcanoes erupt in Southeast Asia. So I wanted to give you the update on that. We'll continue to watch these volcanoes in this part of the globe because Kamchatka is on the Ring of Fire, Philippines, Indonesia, Ring of Fire, and so we're just seeing a ton of activity from the Ring of Fire. Of course, it's always usually fairly active, but 5 going off simultaneously in a big way in one day after a G2 storm, probably a bit more than normal. So I will keep you up to date on all that. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been your host, Stefan Burns, wishing each and every single one of you well. Please subscribe to stay up to date and smash that thumbs up button to help this new Clips channel grow. With that, I'm out. Have a great day. See you soon.